Hi, Alon from International Cruiser here, and in recent months the old debate has resurfaced about the automatic tipping charges on cruise ships with various companies, or more precisely, whether it's okay to cancel them. Now, I'm not going to get into the argument about whether it's right or not. Everyone should do what they think is best. But I'm a numbers guy, so no one can convince me that the tips are actually distributed, at least not in the way the cruise companies claim, that the tips you pay on the ships are actually distributed. Does this mean that the cruise companies are taking a cut and pocketing the money themselves? I don't know, but that's not the question. Maybe they do, and maybe the tips are distributed differently, as some claims suggest. But let me ask you, if a company publishes a chart showing how the tips are divided among the different service providers, and I can prove to you that the math doesn't add up and the money isn't distributed the way they say it is, if at all, would you still believe the companies when they say the tips go entirely to the crew members or not? For me, the answer is no, and if you can find a way for the math to work out, as I will try to do in a moment, I'd be glad to hear it. However, if you accept the numbers as they are, I believe that settles the debate about whether the tips go directly to the service providers on cruise ships. I should mention that in the past, I was on the side that supported leaving the automatic tip charge in place, and I even added extra cash directly to the service staff. But on my last two cruises, for the first time, I also canceled the automatic tip charges and increased my direct payment to my personal service provider, the one who actually provided me with service. And why? Because if we look at the distribution of tips as published by Royal Caribbean, for example, we can see that even before the most recent increase, the stateroom attendant, according to that breakdown, received $3.55 per passenger per day. And after the latest increase, the estimate is $4.55, although that is just an estimate. So let's take the official price, $3.55 per participant per day of the cruise. 2 participants per room, 30 days in a month, that's $213 per room. How many rooms does each cabin steward serve on a cruise ship? So, in recent years, since most cruise lines have gone from cleaning the room twice a day to just once a day, the number of rooms per steward has increased. I've even heard stories of 18 or even 24 rooms because there was a shortage of staff. But again, let's not take extreme cases. On my last cruise on the Disney Fantasy, our steward had 14 rooms. On the previous cruise, on the NCL Breakaway, my steward had 16 rooms. At least that's what the stewards told me. Of course, this varies from company to company, from ship to ship, and even from cruise to cruise. But considering that the cruise lines themselves report occupancy rates of 100% and above, and that even before the recent changes they reported that a steward is responsible for 12 to 20 rooms, I don't think it's unreasonable to take 14 rooms per steward as an average. That gives us a sum of almost $3,000 in gratuities per steward per month, before taking into account the third and fourth guests in at least some of the rooms, and before adding the recent increase in daily tips charged to passengers, which alone would raise the amount to more than $3,800 for the tips portion alone. Now, let the cruise lines come and prove that they consistently pay salaries including tips of $3,000 per steward. Most stewards don't get a paycheck like that, including their regular salary, not just the tips. Show me a steward who claims to have a steady salary of $4,500 a month on average. I don't know of such numbers. On sites like Glassdoor and Dover, employees' salaries are reported. The data in the cruise industry indicates a base salary of $1,200 to $1,500 per month for a steward, and salaries including tips averaging $1,800 to $2,500 per month. These amounts are lower than the total tips alone, as I have shown, and therefore I can say with a high degree of certainty that there is more to the story than what is apparent when it comes to the distribution of tips that are automatically collected from guests by the cruise companies. And before you jump into the comments and explain to me that even today there are people who cancel, and that's why we don't see these numbers, I want to address that and another very important point that needs to be mentioned. But before that, if I manage to open your eyes with the raw numbers themselves, because most people simply don't bother to do the math, I'd appreciate it if you give the video a like. If you disagree with what I've said, I'd be happy if you share your opinion with me in the comments below. In addition, I just want to mention that I upload a lot of videos with useful tips and tricks, as well as plenty of interesting information about the international cruise world. So if you don't want to miss future videos, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon. Now, let's get back to the topic. The issue of tip cancellation by itself can't explain the gaps, because again, for the math to add up, a lot more than half of the passengers would need to cancel the automatic tip payment, and we know that's not the case. The only reference I managed to find on this subject appeared in a paper published in 2015, which cited a survey conducted by Carnival itself in 2004. There, it was claimed that 1 in 7 guests changes the automatic amount, whether by adjusting it or cancelling it altogether. The source also found that 6% of those who make changes actually request to increase the amount, an interesting statistic in itself. Now, it's clear to me that after 20 years, this figure is probably different today than what was reported back then, but as I said, it's the only data available online on the subject. By the way, the same source also notes that most people who cancel say they want to pay service providers directly in cash, and that only half of those who cancel the automatic tip payment actually end up giving a cash tip to the staff. And here I want to emphasize, it's hard to say that I've also come to the conclusion that it's better to pay service providers directly and cancel the automatic payment. What I mean is not that you should avoid compensating for this payment. I regularly give a cash tip to the cabin steward and an additional tip to 2 or 3 of the main dining room staff who served us throughout the cruise. Is this a perfect solution? No. I'm aware that there are service providers working behind the scenes who could, in principle, be negatively affected by the cancellation. There are problems with every method, but I can't support a system that can be empirically proven to deceive the customer, as we've seen that the numbers as reported by the cruise companies themselves don't add up. And I say companies because although I presented Royal Caribbean here as an example, the distribution isn't different in the other companies either. For example, this is NCL's table from a few years ago. Today at NCL, a passenger in a regular cabin already pays $20 per night, one of the highest amounts in the industry. And again, I want to remind you, the number of rooms per cabin steward has increased because the service level dropped from twice a day cleaning to once a day, while at the same time, the amount charged per passenger per day has gone up, and significantly. I remember the days when most companies charged $12 per day and MSC used to charge $8 per person. So the numbers do more or less add up. But in light of the fact that in recent years the cruise companies have raised the cost and not by a little. In some cases, we're talking about an increase of 40%, and considering that the number of rooms per cabin steward has also gone up, it's no longer possible to believe the cruise company's claims on this matter. And one last point to finish. If you cancel the tips, then be fair and give them in cash. I completely agree that the workers on cruise ships deserve it. They work hard, and the level of service they provide is high. As I said, I give a tip to the room attendant, the head waiter, and the assistant waiter, the one who consistently refills our glasses throughout every dinner. And that's on every cruise. When I received personal attention every evening from the shift manager in the main dining room, he also got an envelope. If there is a bartender or another service provider who serves you throughout the cruise, give them something as well. It's more than fine. I'm not going to tell you how much you should give, but I'll leave you with the following calculation. If we take the same data for the room attendant and you give $50 per room for a week-long cruise, whether you're a couple, 3 or 4 people, then by the end of the month, they should receive almost $3,000 in cash, assuming everyone pays that amount. And if you gave 3 or 4 such envelopes to the people I mentioned, then your cost for the cruise is an additional $150 to $200 in tips. You should take this cost into account. This probably won't significantly change your total vacation expenses, but it does change reality for those workers. And if you went on a cruise for less than a week, since there are many 3 or 4 day cruises, even $20 to $30 as a tip is nice. I think we'll wrap up the discussion about tips here, even though I have a lot more to say on the subject, because the video is already long as it is. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Did you learn something new? Did these numbers open your eyes? And if you have anything to add regarding cancelling the tips or keeping them as they are, again, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a comment below. And where do we go from here? You can click on one of the following videos to learn more about the world of courses, and I'll see you in the next video.